Nick Nurse has been fired by the Toronto Raptors. Masai Ujiri had a press conference today, and he talked about it a little bit. Apparently, on his way out the door, Nick Nurse said, "Good luck with those guys." Seems like, I don't know, that's not great. Not a gracious exit. Guys, we talked about this a couple weeks ago with Katie Heindel. We felt like it was a weird situation anyway. Obviously, this team has underperformed, since that title run, and for various reasons, not just coaching. But the stories that have come out so far this morning, they cite basically lack of organization, lack of a plan internally and for the coaching staff with the players, and the development has certainly dropped off. And we all noted that, some of these guys have stagnated. Scotty Barnes took a demonstrable step back to start the year, although I do think he finished the season pretty strongly. It's not great. But we talked about this a couple weeks ago. The guy kind of started this in the media himself, and now he's out.
We talk about teams quitting on coaches. There's teams like that may or may not have happened here, but it may or may not have also been precipitated by it. I mean, is it too harsh to say the coach quitting on the team?
I don't think so. I mean, if a coach sits down and starts speculating on his own future in a press conference, and then again, Messiah, I mean, not a guy who really tells you a whole lot, but when he tells you that on his way out the door, Mo, he says, "Good luck with those guys." Doesn't seem like he's saying good luck with my guys.
Yeah, that's an awful way to leave there. I'm sure Nick Nurse isn't happy that Messiah shared that one detail, but ultimately, look, it, Dave, more than anybody. I am not a Nick Nurse fan. I think he's overrated as a coach. I think we give him a lot of credit. I think he's very good on the defensive end as a coach. I think he's done absolutely nothing with this team on offense. And everybody always says, well, look at the team he has. He has no creators and whatnot. That's when you need the coach the most, to put the team in a system. Lack of organization, lack of development, a lot of problems across the board there from what Nick Nurse has done. We give him a ton of credit for winning a championship and throwing out a box and one on Steph Curry. And everybody goes completely nuts about how great he is. He's a top 5 coach and all of this stuff. He hasn't done jack shit since. And I'm sorry. Ty Lue coaches his ass off. Eric Spoelstra coaches his ass off. And I'm critical of those guys. I've been all over Ty this year. And I know coaches can have bad years and things like that. Nick Nurse has not lived up to the hype. And sure as hell not lived up to the hype to have your own merchandise. I think there's a lot of things there where I'm not surprised. And this has been one of the worst kept secrets. We kind of all felt like he was gone since March. And it's not good that he was already connected to the Houston job. 1, when Steven Silas was still the coach. And 2, he still had a job. Like there's not, it's quite interesting to have that stuff kind of go on behind the scenes. And I think that's sort of the situation there. But that's a rough way to leave. But we'll see how good he is.
3, you've got a job with a decent roster for a very good organization, and that's the job you're sort of openly pining for. There's a little bit of what are you about? We question when players make those kind of decisions. I think that we should, again, I feel a little uncomfortable, not because we don't know, we only suspect, but at the same time, we would ask about a player, so I'm going to ask about the coach.
Look, don't we all think it's weird that James Harden is being linked to going back to Houston at this point? We think that's weird, right? A player of his stature and status and this stage of his career.
I don't think it's weird just because I don't think James Harden's about that life, but that's a whole different...
Okay, that's fair. But this is my thing, though. If you're not
about
the same
that
argument
life, we're making
like
here.
Houston's the right place to go, right?
Yeah.
Right. And I think also Nick Nurse is trying to go to Houston and is part of a power play. And he's trying to get the more control over the team itself and things like that, which, hey, good luck.
Where have we
I don't
seen
trust
that?
him as the coach. Yeah, well, I've seen it in many places and it never works except
better I should
one
not
place. Right. And I think the more interesting scenario is I'm tired of coaches being one-sided coaches.
Yes.
I kill players that are one-sided players. I yell at people when they say that's a two-way player. I say, no, that's a fucking basketball player. As a basketball coach, you can't just be good on one side of the court. You need to be good at both ends of the court. You need to have stuff. And I didn't like D'Antoni because he was so offensive based and didn't have a defensive structure. I'm all over Tibbs for being unbelievable defensively and not having an offensive structure. It's the same thing with Nick Nurse, and we're tough on players for that. We need to be tougher on coaches in that respect too. This whole idea of offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator is bullshit. This isn't the NFL. The way you play defense affects how you play offense. The way you play offense affects how you defend. And I think it's important for the coach to be able to handle both sides.
But the point about coordinators is the point. If you should recognize as a coach, I am more interested. I am more innovative. I am more competent at concepting and teaching these things. I need to not be threatened by having someone else who's also excellent, but their excellence does complements rather than overlaps with mine, so that we can get the best of everything. And I will empower that person, but it's still coming from me. But coach is going to take you through it, and it's going to be good.
I had this conversation, it's funny enough, yesterday with a guy who was an NBA scout and coached in college about what makes a good coach, and how it's really hard to teach, because you're part salesman, and being a tactician is maybe fifth on the list of things that you need to be good at. But recognizing your own weaknesses and trying to, support those with NBA staffs are huge now. There's just no reason to not have, good people around you. And that says a lot to me, because if you want all the attention and all the credit, well, you're going to get the blame too. And for me, I'd rather spread the blame and the credit around, but, I'm built a little different.
I think the one, if you want the credit and have your own merchandise, you better be better at that.
Well,
stuff.
that's a whole.
Dave, why don't you have merch though? Let's be honest.
I'm fine with Dave having merch.
I do have merch. Thank you very much. There's a little bit of merch right there.
Well, okay. Why don't I have your merch then?
Well, you can go to tpublic.com. It's out there.
I don't have anybody's merch, let alone the places I work and podcast at. The whole other side.
Oh, but I owe you some
thing
merch.
you said that was one thing that you said that was really important, Dave. And I think you guys, even you and your friend in the conversation, undersold it. It's not part salesman. It's all salesman.
Right.
You are selling your product every day, and your product is the shit you bring on the court. It's about getting buy-in every day. And I think that's where Nick Nurse lost it. He stopped selling it, and the player stopped buying it. Somewhere in that scenario, that's where things went wrong. And I think that's where a lot of times a lot of coaches end up failing with that stuff. And I think that's the key word and the key phrase you said in there that's really important to hit on. But again, I just think, hey man, good luck with Nick Nurse.
Yeah, that sort of ego doesn't fly, I don't think, in the NBA, right? Like the stars are the basketball players in the NBA. If you want to have that sort of ego about yourself, have your own logo as a coach, seems like college would be a good place for that, where it is a little bit more cult of personality and being famous, and having a good Nike deal and, being able to recruit is important. But in the NBA, good coaches recruit by being great coaches. That's how you recruit. You get people who want to go play for you, which is still pretty rare. But on the occasion that you do, you got to be one of the best.
Who are these star coaches in the the coaches right now who are stars? I think there's one. And I think that if we're talking about an ego, that's Steve Kerr.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever we think that he is in the firmament of coaching ability,
right?
He is the coach who is especially now that Pop has kind of aged out and the Spurs haven't been relevant.
How dare you?
I mean, come on,
just wait.
But you're talking about, you're talking earlier about spreading credit, about, not making it about you, about, emotional intelligence. What are the traits that we associate most with both Steve Kerr and Greg Popovich that allows them to be a star, but also not overshine the guys who are actually doing it on the court? And I think that's the thing that we're realizing. The people we think are the best coaches, Spo, Ty Lue, they all have that. There is not a single guy who is a look at me coach that and maybe that's an aesthetic judgment on our part, but I really don't think so, because I really don't think that flies, as you say, in today's day and age. And I probably hasn't flown for a long time.
Well, Phil Jackson might have been the last one, but that's a different kind of look at me. It's more of an aloof look at me. Like he wanted to be looked at, but he didn't want you to know that he wanted to be looked at.